China, its impressive rise as a global center of innovation, development, and high technology is searching new markets and to expand the commercial routes to re-edit antique practices. Its careful, many times silent geopolitical movements are not few and less they don't lack a strategy. They have deviated their traffic towards the Pacific in the South Asian coast and even establishing military control posts on the Indian coast and Pacific to have commercial passes, energy posts, oil stands, and have a privileged and strategic position for the naval power of the Southeast and South Asia. The emblematic zones are early harvests, according to China-Pakistan, a direct route to the Arabic Sea that modernizes roads, railroads, gas ducts, builds new ones. What actors are involved and what does this ambitious project mean? Economic Hall, China, Pakistan. Containment of the United States. This is our critical move today. Let's look at the last facts and actors involved. More than 2,000 years ago, the millenary China was producing species, tissues, and highly beloved technologies and maritime routes that connected it with Eastern Europe, crossing great part of Central and South Asia. This started losing its preeminence as of the European colonization that reached America and placed the Pacific and the Atlantic as its neural ways of traveling. Today, as we all know, China is re-editing this land and sea routes, and one of the great works is the economic hall China-Pakistan that is now an important factor of dynamization in the economic and political arenas. These halls are linked toward this route. The most viable and active and quickest is the China-Pakistan hall that Pakistan is opening and connecting with China and Central Asia. The last government did not tell us anything. They told us they were going to take our homes. It's good, this hall, to benefit Pakistan, but what happens with us? We have no basic services, water, electricity. We hope that the new government and the people linked to the economic hall cover our needs. As the Chinese President Xi Jinping said, everyone must benefit from China-Pakistan economic hall. We do, and our leaders have asked, and I'm very happy to tell you that since our company started operating with us, we have offered more than 2,000 jobs to local inhabitants. Most are marketing managers, finance administrators, and human resources are local. This started with 150 students, and right now there are more than 500. It was built with the Chinese government, with the Education Department of Pakistan. They also built a hospital. This economic hall, China-Pakistan, is a great project, but it will take time. We cannot say that tomorrow we will develop everything, and we can't say that they haven't done anything. We take the central idea. One of the main projects of the Silk Route is this hall, China-Pakistan, a holistic project to reduce 50% of time of transportation of Chinese products to Africa, Middle East, and Europe. In the case of sea transportation from Middle East to China, this reduction means around 30 days less in the transportation time without the savings in fuel, without counting. We are going to see a mapping that contains very important strategic data on this economic hall. This modern China-Pakistan corridor will connect China to the Gwadar port in the Indian Ocean, 530 kilometers west to Karachi, which is the most populated city of Pakistan. The port was inaugurated in 2007 and is administered by China since 2015. It cuts in arrival time for shiploads to the south of Asia, Middle East, Oriental Africa, and the Mediterranean Sea without the need for the ships to stop in Chinese ports of the Pacific Ocean. In addition, China has financed the construction of a special economic zone, an LGP corridor, and the construction of an international airport in the city of Gwadar in order to unite the western city of China of Gwadar. This economic corridor will have 3 strips, north-south, that were called Western, Central, and Eastern. It is divided in 3 in Islamabad, and the northern one is connected to the city of China, a Chinese city of Kashgar. Other strips will be built or upgraded. So they will have even 7 streets that will cross different places in geography, like the Himalayas in the border and the southern border. This road network will also be complemented with railroads, and others existing will be improved and expanded. Until now, the approximate cost of this corridor is calculated around $60 billion, around 1/3 of the total investment of the Silk Route. Its construction, together with energy projects in Pakistan, has created 60,000 new jobs in the country, and it is hoped that this country reaches 800,000 by 2030. The relation of Pakistan with the United States is one important point that is addressed in this article of OrdenMundial.com called Pakistan the Country of Two Faces. Trump has called this country a safe haven for terrorists. More than $11 billion to Pakistan, but this has not entailed any crisis. U.S. military attacks with drones and the attack that killed Osama bin Laden in 2011 showed Washington's policy versus Islamabad. Trump expects that money helps stop the movement of guerrillas and provision routes. One of its paragraphs says Pakistan, the country of two faces. One of the things that we will develop when we will analyze. Now we go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Popular Republic of China, that on September 8, 2018, published the following. Wang Yi, the construction of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor has real results and have not aggregated the debt burden of Pakistan. The Foreign Affairs Minister of China, Wang Yi, met in September with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, Qureshi, and in a press conference in Islamabad, he answered that there were 22 cooperative projects, 9 completed, 13 in construction, with $19 billion invested. This also results in 1 to 2% growth of Pakistan's GDP. The construction of this corridor is not addressed to regions or groups, but to the entire country and benefits the Pakistani people. And this was an answer of Minister Wang Yi in the press conference I was talking about. Our recommendation is in webpage Universidad de Bogotá, Jorge Tadeo Lozano, Under the title China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Great Challenges, written by Ahmed Fawzi Mustafai, university professor in September 2018. In contrast with European colonial powers that surged to expand their empires beyond their limits and open new markets, either pacifically or violently, in remote places, China historically has been a cultural and commercial center of the world and insists that whoever wants to deal with it must go to it. This is just a fragment to invite you to read this article that deals on the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Well, what elements determine the relation of these two neighbors and historic allies, China-Pakistan, and what does the finalization of the economic corridor mean? We will make a pause and answer these questions after it.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Corredor económico China-Pakistán, irreversible.
China-Pakistan economic corridor, irreversible factor of containment of the United States. Let's try to answer this question throughout our critical move. Sputnik points out in 2016, November, China suits its way to Near East. The recent inauguration of the Gwadar port in Pakistan, rebuilt by China, is another sample that Beijing has ambitious plans in its presence of the region. This also shows that the giant from Asia is willing to protect its interests at any price, even by using military troops abroad. And later it talks about how the ceremony was on September 13 and everything related to the care or maintenance of these facilities. Now we go to Prensa Latina. Economic Corridor contributes 300 megawatts of energy to Pakistan, and it talks about 4 aeolic projects are connected to the Southeastern Asian country, including wind project Dawood, 50 megawatts, Shasal Energy 50 also, the second wind park 100, and OEP of 100 megawatts. The Chinese Development Bank provided $252 million for this project, with 75% and 25% respectively. We now add other data. China and Pakistan have old links, but in the last years, these have been filled with more strategic contents, and this has placed this binational relation at a new level with more investment and a deeper alliance. China is the main commercial partner of Pakistan with almost $20 billion. In 2015, the commercial volume between both countries grew 30% in relation to 2 years behind. In 2016, they signed a free trade agreement, and today Pakistan sells raw material to China, and China exports manufactured products, including heavy machinery. Besides the bilateral relations that in different times of history have had many differences with India, Pakistan because of the Kashmir Valley, and China also claims sovereignty and administration on one portion of that geographic space in the south of the most western side of the Himalayas. This is a border conflict. In spite of the truce and successive attempts to reach the peace, it is considered one of the most serious points of history because of the number of deaths. Now Pakistan controls the western part, China southern, and this was the power that gave place to the strategic Iron Alliance with China, consistent in containing terrorist groups in the Islamic Republic and China, and infrastructure cooperation. Pakistan with Central Asia and Iran is a door to China, to the rest of the world also. All the Chinese efforts to attain stability in its southern neighbor, which is quite complex with different ethnic groups, but with a higher power than what it seems. We're going to add the vision of our analysts from Spain. We have Iñaki Gil de San Vicente, international Basque analyst. We thank you for your presence, and Ulises Granados Quiroz from Mexico, coordinator of the Asia-Pacific Studies Center. I will start with Iñaki Gil de San Vicente. I would like to ask first, what potential does this project have inside this other broad Chinese project, the New Silk Route? Do you think that it responds to what development strategy and diplomatic strategy? Well, it's an accumulative potential, synergetic. This is a project that is part of pharaonic job, a new route of the silk that everybody knows now, but this specific corridor between Pakistan and India to the port of Gwadar, because it's the central axis of this, is a decisive branch to assure control of a zone where European imperialism had anchorage, very strong anchorage point. China had a very strong need to expand its connections north of Africa, Iran, and the east of Europe without having to cross and negotiate with India. This was the Pakistani way, and it is continuing it. We can say it's a pharaonic work, and that will have many problems. But there is also a strategic decision, not only economic, but a struggle for the administration of the global development of the world. Let's place two examples. On one hand, the U.S. sale of weapons to Pakistan, that for many years has been the safe port of Pakistan to guarantee its control of Afghanistan and a threat from Iran, and to guarantee a presence in the zone, and in any case to be able to even control India. It needed to sell large amounts of weapons to Pakistan. Those sales have reduced in 5 years in 76%. And China has stated that the creation of a military port, not only economic in Gwadar, but also a military port, it will have geopolitical and military strategic consequences that will favor all the surrounding countries. For example, it will reduce in half the time China needs to connect with the north of Africa, Iran, and the rest of Europe. And it will reduce, according to different studies, to 30 days the time China needs to assure a flow of crude in Middle East countries. Together with this, there's another measure that goes to a second level, but is also essential. That is that Pakistan and China have decided that all the trade that they have established with decisive energy resources be performed in yuans, not in dollars. This is a very strong coup that joins other coups for the control of international finances. Let's remember that one of the reasons of destroying Libya was that Gaddafi, besides economic alliances with China, had also decided to abandon petrodollar. This was also one of the reasons to finish Iraq, and is one of the reasons underlying the statement of destroying and balkanizing Syria. Well, a power like China and partners like Pakistan are establishing relations with yuans. This is a rocket against the Western imperialism conducted by the United States. This is essential to understand the role of terrorism or the struggle against terrorism and other neighborhood relations. The border between Afghanistan and Pakistan already was too volatile, and investigators say that both countries have had an organic feedback, and that many times they join tribal ethnic elements. Well, that is not exempt of cross-border violence, and I would like to ask you if this project is exempt of those complexities of the zone that have not been solved yet. Well, the port of Gwadar is in the zone of Balochistan, which is one of the poorest of Pakistan, that also borders with Iran, and that has an ethnic group that practices a variance of the Islamic religion and is approximately 3.8 of the total population of Pakistan. But the region has 40% of Pakistan's gas production, and from 2 years behind, Pakistan has a serious energy problem, and they are overboard with oil, gas, and nuclear energy production. At the same time, Gwadar is a focus of penetration of Al-Qaeda terrorism that, as we all know, is within the European, U.S., and Western terrorist networks. At least 50 Chinese workers have died attacked near the port of Gwadar, attacked by independentist organizations, Islamists, directly related with Al-Qaeda in Balochistan. The policy there is very clear. in other at other levels, Afghanistan has a tolerant group with ethnic groups, but in an agreement with China, Pakistan will probably show that the China and Gwadar corridor will enrich the people and allow a cultural and economic development that has not been seen until now. But this means a problem, which is how to eradicate the penetration of Western secret services through Al-Qaeda. We must also see that in Gwadar, the NATO and U.S. troops disembarked, also from France and Germany and Spain, to reach Afghanistan. We must always consider the policy of chaos controlled by the United States, because they are creating a zone that, if not controlled wisely with an integration policy, a zone, something similar to Syria, or what they wanted Syria to be, could take place. But generating ultra-reactionary terrorist groups to favor U.S. interests. I think that the Pakistani government, leaving aside other matters, has very clear the dangers of leaving free zones for Al-Qaeda terrorism, like the case of Afghanistan in the northwest part, the border zones between Afghanistan and Pakistan. The alleged death of bin Laden is closely related to all this. I think the most reasonable would be that Pakistan and China have an integration in Balochistan to abort a provocation policy from Western policy through Al-Qaeda. There's also a historic border conflict that unites China and Pakistan against India. I would like to ask you if this corridor could also be used by India, or to create some kind of containment wall in alliance with the United States, its neighbors China and Pakistan, or to use everything that this corridor will bring in economic levels. So the geostrategic balance, that and including India as an essential actor. Well, at this time, India is in a problem that at least has three great contradictions. The first and main one that usually is not considered is the social situation inside India. At this time, the people, the working class of India, is turning to the left. I know the city of Bombay, that when I was there was ruled by a powerful Communist Party and mayor. So I think that the main movement of history, 180,000 workers had place in India right now. These people are exploited, and the inferior caste that did not understand the situation until now. That movement knows that under neoliberal control and conducted by the United States, this will become worse. India has a neoliberal growth potential under ferocious capitalistic development that could exceed Chinese, but considering internal contradictions of religious struggles to utmost levels. This is the problem India has right now. In November 2018, 18, powerful independence Hindu movement powered by Hindu capital and agents that we all know where they come from and have an extreme right ideology, is encouraging the war against Islamic religion. They have concentrated 200 people in an old mosque, and they are generating an artificial conflict regarding the Kashmir zone to annihilate the national cultural rights of working classes, and especially the rights of women in India. That is something that we're not analyzing, but is having a spectacular awareness in India. These three problems that India confronts could be solved in a democratic regime that, together with the growing economic relations with China and military relations with Russia, could allow it to get away from the United States. But the forces of the United States in UK are still very strong in India, and they will make them go forward. We could make a relation between South Korea and India. I think that these three conflicts that are very deep and that question the future of the India at this time show that only a democratic, radical regime that approaches and rejects neoliberalism from the West and Hinduist neoliberalism, it could guarantee the work conditions of an impressive working class that, as I said, just made the history's main strike in the country. Thank you very much for your contributions.
Despedimos el enlace con Iñaki Gil de San Vicente,
This was Iñaki Gil de San Vicente.
Y ahora tenemos pendiente enlazar vía telefónica desde Ciudad de México
from Mexico City. We have Ulises Granados Quiroz with a study program of UNAM for Mexico. Considering the strategic position of the port of Guadar, this project would necessarily result in a geopolitical, irreversible project for China. How do you see it in terms of geostrategic balance? Thank you for the invitation, Lucia. We must say that this China-Pakistan is probably the most important part of the Silk Route planned by Chinese President Xi Jinping in 2014. It's very important because Pakistan, especially the port of Gadar, is the exit door for merchandise and input by China in Xinjiang. The central western part of China could be connected through the Indian Sea, through this corridor. So the good relation that China has with Pakistan and all its project should theoretically result in economic growth of Pakistan and even in India, Afghanistan, Iran. And the port of Guadar is very important. It is a central part. Now, it's important to mention in geopolitics that India does not belong. It was invited, but it did not participate in the Silk Route. So the port of Gadar could be used by India for its economic development, but it is refusing to do it. India does not wish to participate in this corridor because, as Iñaki said, there is a territorial dispute in the Kashmir zone, and one part is occupied by Pakistan, the Pakistani Kashmir that India claims. And this is the main reason why India, even if it was invited, decided not to. In any case, the port of Gadar is still very important for China. Thank you very much, Professor, for this link you've made with us. Let's continue deepening what do the rest of actors involved have to do? Would this increase or decrease tensions? And could the United States be forced to stop selling weapons in order to keep China from earning more political area? We have our next guest ready, and we will continue analyzing with him after this pause.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Pakistan economic corridor, a factor for stability in Asia, conflict with the United States. This move will also be analyzed in a sense of a dispute for geostrategic spaces of power and control of geostrategic resources. At the beginning of 2018, President of the United States, Donald Trump, cut $225 billion in support to Pakistan after saying that the country collaborated with terrorism and the United States hadn't received anything. In spite of the assistance, this episode of Trump's threat, Pakistan and China signed an agreement to increase and cover the bilateral assistance in yuans. Generally, they reach through Pakistan. The other aspect is the terrorism that plays its role in the region, in the mountain zone of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The region of Balochistan, the port of Gwadar, in the end of 2017, 26 Chinese workers were wounded in their bedroom after an attack with grenades. And the Pakistani government informed that since 2014, more than 50 citizens working in this corridor had died in these kinds of attacks. Also, the role of India, that with historic differences with Pakistan and China, could be an ally of the United States to counterweight the the steel alliance of both neighbors to potentiate its economy and infrastructure. Therefore, for dialogue and the powerful neighbors of Asia, and not to risk Chinese investments in its territory, Russia has not become distant from China, and they handle very carefully their relation. They also share large interests in Central Asia against the United States. They are key pieces for stability and security in the region. Now we have in our study Basel Tahendine, international analyst. According to the aspects we have analyzed, I first want to ask you, what would the United States do in case of sending important provisions to its troops in that territory to find a replacement of Pakistan in the region and send those supplies to Afghanistan? It has no possibilities. Perhaps India, but India is unable because it is interrupted by its border with China and Pakistan. It would be very complex for the United States to reach Pakistan only by air. To have China having a military basis in a region, first the UK, then the United States have considered its strategic area. More than 30% of the world's crude crosses through the Strait of Hormuz, so that goes to the Arab Sea, and then to the world, to China, Europe. For the United States, this is of vital importance, especially that there are several U.S. military bases there, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. These are essential strategic spaces that they have a front in the entrance of the Strait of Hormuz, or a military base of a power, a contrary power, opposing U.S. interests, would be an essential problem, more than military and economic, as your other guests have well explained. It would be a huge problem for the United States, especially because Pakistan was always a pawn of the United States in the region. Pakistan, then India, and the United States has played with both, tried to use India against China, and Pakistan also against Iran, against China. And at a given time in the past, against the Soviet Union. Let's remember Afghanistan had a socialist government conducted by Muhammad Najibullah that in the 80s, 90s was defeated by the Taliban groups that were trained by the United States. But they armed and trained where? There. And all this territory was used to train these groups, and then the United States, they fled from their hands. It's false. They're always there using the policy that Michel Colon defined in his book. This constructive chaos, this huge Middle East, was nothing else than the chaotization of the region. Bauchistan today is the equivalent of what the United States wanted to do with Kurdistan, to form an entity without possibilities of life in the north of Syria, in Iraq territory, northern Iraq territory, in the zone where the northern Kurdish people live. But it has been unable to use it. But they have used it as an international revolutionary. We must be in favor of all the people's self-determination, but not if the United States pretends to use that people of Baluchistan against the interest of Iran and all the peoples of the region, or the Kurdish people. Could terrorism that was conveniently placed in that area be functional to the sabotage that's what's happening in these terrorist attacks to these facilities proves it. United States is using these terrorist groups, and that have been useful to this chaotization of the Middle East. And what could China do to counterweight? This is the reason why military bases of the region, because it has to protect its interests that belong to the Pakistani people and the Chinese people as well. But also other interests of the region are participating, other capitals are benefiting Eurasian countries, because this port will not only be a corridor to benefit the industries that are being installed in the port, Chinese and mixed capital, China-Pakistani capital, but also the entrance of raw material to Eurasia market, where there are also other great industries in Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan. It's a natural corridor to reach there and reduce significant times of delivery. That reduce costs. I want to ask you also regarding something that Iñaki said in relation to a coup that the United States has received in its finances, because after Trump's statements, always hot statements regarding Pakistan that says we have given this country so much money and received nothing. There was an agreement between Pakistan and China to negotiate exclusively in yuan. So Pakistan and its ambiguity, its double role, will have to decide. No. I think it has decided already. This is why the United States has decided to end the assistance to Pakistan. It was not assistance; it was money to finance these terrorist groups through the Pakistani state. But this money was not useful but for the foreign policy of the United States, but to destroy Pakistan itself. Pakistan understood late, very late, that by following this foreign policy, it would not benefit its country, and that in the future it would lose everything. Because Pakistan was losing its people, it was impoverishing the region of Balochistan. It's one of the poorest of the region and one of the richest also, because gas and oil of Pakistan are extracted in that region, almost 80%. But undoubtedly under chaos. What economic activity could Pakistan develop? Industrialization or any plan needs first security. And there was no security because those loans and false humanitarian aid by the United States was used to finance terrorist groups that escaped the hands of all, because Pakistani intelligence was not able to control them either, and the United States also. But it is useful in the region to create chaos. Now that yuan now becomes the currency of transaction for both countries, perhaps is one of the main coups that the United States receives in the geopolitical, military, and financial. Because in the end, what supports the United States? It is petrodollars. It is the mandatory law of the world to develop its transactions under the dollar. But if yuan appears now accepted by the IMF, a currency that is really supported in production in the Chinese productive forces, and naturally in the Pakistani case it becomes very attractive. All the capital and transactions, all the merchandise, which is most interesting in these exchanges, through this port will have this as reference, and that therefore, I repeat, it is losing this geopolitical war, the United States, in several aspects. I want to go back to the role of India, since you've mentioned the United States inevitably. Could these two actors create some kind of a counterweight to this great steel alliance between Pakistan and China? Or if India could say China invests a lot in our territory, this is inconvenient, and use the corridor as a platform for dialogue, for agreement, and lighten the historic differences. Well, that's what they're doing. What is happening in the region is real, the growing power, and let's not say hegemonic in a Western style like the United States. China is completely different. It's a win-win. It's a share of stability, because if you don't share, you don't reach stability, and the goals required by the great capitals are not met. They're not going to play to lose, especially when there's an opponent like the United States doing anything, dividing, breaking, using its mercenary anthropology to put peoples against each other. But China has masterly played. There was a project, TAPI, that a U.S. project that planned to take petroleum out of Turkmenistan, cross it through Afghanistan, Pakistan, province of Balochistan, and take it to that port, and then benefit India somehow, but especially make a business for the United States. It needed to stabilize Afghanistan, and of course it didn't achieve it. This is why I said the strategy of financing terrorism has escaped its hands. It couldn't even perform its original project. But China proposed another one. China proposed IPI that included these are the closer oil fields. It's not Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan that China is already swallowing them in the north. So here are the great Irani and Iraqi reservoirs. Let's use the same corridor, reach China, but benefit essentially India with that. And India could participate in that project. This is why many analysts said that this policy mistaken policy of India of looking at this as something contrary to its interests and continue following U.S. policy will end up against it. And sooner or later, India will realize that it can't do any other thing but join this and benefit from these new proposals in the region. To conclude, Bassem, do you think this project will make the Chinese rise a reality? Undoubtedly. And in fact, it includes the ancient routes. The ancient route of the Silk, the same they used 2,000 years ago. And it complements with the ambitious project that now is a reality. That route that through trains, because they also established with Pakistan a railroad. The railroads that are arriving to Beijing will arrive to Europe. So this is an essential plan to complete this ambitious dream. And I want to emphasize that this is not a hegemony as Western, in a Western style, but under the strategic win-win strategy, where all countries will benefit and where Pakistan undoubtedly and all countries of the region will benefit. There's the example of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan that has a U.S. military bases. That have seen this route some kind of salvation. The United States doesn't offer anything to these countries. The war, destruction, contradictions, and they place these countries one against others. Pakistan is looking at other countries of the region that this great route of the Silk are now complemented with this outlet through Pakistan to the strategic geopolitical space that is Strait of Hormuz and the Arabic Sea would be very beneficial for all these countries, but especially because of the strategy and the concept that China has printed in this policy, win-win. They will all win and benefit, especially people. Balochistan, the Baluchi people that has been historically subjected, impoverished, now with this project, they will see great possibilities of development. That in the end, United States will take advantage of poverty maintained in that region to incentivize fundamentalism and ultranationalism. Perhaps economic development will also influence these fundamentalist groups because they're not going to gain any other steps in development. Thank you very much. Let's go to our final ideas.
It is
necessary to go back to the silk of the route of the silk that will run all Central Asia and reach the central core of Europe. This will give China the role of superpower. It's a physical integration of Eurasia. In this context, we've talked about a characteristics of a project that has organic, accumulative passion, a vital area to exit to the Arab Sea and an interest door also. Factors include that the United States, product of a master coup in financial terms, has reduced more than 70% of weapons sale to Pakistan to control Afghanistan and also to threaten Iran. That was its goal. Regarding transporter security and the threat of terrorism, the United States uses it conveniently while China does not stay there and seeks military control points, but also promotes peace. The economic dynamics is undeniable, and in this case, all actors must evaluate and assess all aspects. India will have to struggle its contradictions. Anti-hegemonic project based on the Chinese logic win-win. Thank you very much for being with us. We are here from Monday to Friday in Caracas, Venezuela.